She said it flat, like it cost nothing. My money is off limits. It's all mine. She looked at me and smiled the way someone smiles when they think they've already won. I'm 29. Her name is Mia. She's 30. That sentence hit the room harder than any clause in the paper on the table. Not because it was legalese, because it wasn't, but because it stripped the thing we'd been building down to a line item and handed it back like change. My throat went dry. My hands went steady. Forever? I asked. She shrugged. As long as I want it. That's just how it has to be. Then, almost as an afterthought, or a dare, Mia leaned forward and said, in a voice that was calm and dangerous at once, I can replace you in a week. That was the hook. That was the whole scene in one sentence. Her breathy confidence, the glass conference room, her father's polite smile, the two lawyers who read clauses like bedtime stories. Her line lodged in my head and became the timeline I didn't choose, but because she dared me, I kept. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I smiled the smallest, coldest smile I've ever mustered and said, okay, we're done here. Then I left the prenup on the table and walked out. That smile was where my choice began. Listen, the first 1,000 words of this are the hottest part. If you stick with me for this, you'll understand why I left and why what followed wasn't some petty revenge. It was a collapse that showed what people do when money becomes the grammar for love. I'll say it plainly. Mia was brilliant, funny, and the exact person I wanted to wake up next to. We'd known each other for 3 years. We'd shared playlists, an apartment, half a suitcase of arguments, and ridiculous traditions. She always stole my sweater on flights. We'd promised small things to each other without ceremony. That's why the prenup scene cut so deep. It wasn't a stranger asking for protection. It was someone I trusted turning our we into her. She grew up inside a certain world, private schools, a family business, an instinct for shielding wealth that runs in the blood. She moved differently, had different buttons. I grew up different. More levers to pull than vaults to guard. None of that matters except where it matters. When she read the words aloud and her father, Martin Hale, didn't blink. He smiled in that patient, owning way. I realized, in the glass conference room, that he had never had to ask for we. His life had always included the option to turn family into fortress. She said the money had to be protected. She said legacy. She said security. And then, soft as brand placement, if that's a deal breaker, I can replace you in a week. That wasn't a threat so much as a bet. So I called her bluff. I walked. I packed an overnight bag. I left the ring on the dresser. That night, I slept on my friend Marco's couch and listened to my phone light up with calls from my lawyer, from her mother, from her paralegal. My phone became an avalanche of attempts to smooth the wrinkle out of their social calendar. People texted me polite fury, then confusion, then pity. I read them and I deleted them. The rest is the 7-day experiment she'd offered and the fallout that followed. If you want the spoiler, she tried to replace me in 7 days and failed spectacularly. But it wasn't a simple public humiliation. It was a whole slow unspooling that cost reputations, money, and a weird, empty kind of dignity. I'll give you detail. Ages, texts, invoices, vendor emails, the smell of a room, the language of a voicemail. Because details matter. They're what make the replace in a week bet either possible or absurd. After I left the conference room, I sent one email, short, boring, deliberately small. An update that paused the wedding plans until we could talk. I called the venue, checked contracts, and began collecting receipts and vendor contacts for my lawyer. The next morning, Mia sent a photo of the ring with a caption that read like an apology pretending to be bewilderment. Are you really doing this? She was furious I wouldn't fold. She thought I would. People are lazy at narrative. They'll take the prettiest story and hold it up. Mia's family began publishing a version of events into our circles. Stress of planning, different expectations. It was tidy. It made them sympathetic. It made me a footnote. A private group chat filled with an edited clip of the prenup that made her father look like a villain and me like an unwelcome partner. My friend Lena warned me, they're spinning it. Don't let them bait you. I didn't engage with the gossip. I posted a blunt public note that the wedding was canceled and tried to keep things calm. My lawyer told me to stop direct communication and to let counsel handle the noise. The family's lawyers pushed back and sent a letter asking me to reconsider and to allow mediation. The implication was clear. We are powerful and can make this messy for you. An associate of Martin Hale's left a thinly veiled message at my office about reputational consequences. My manager pulled me aside and said to expect noise and to keep my head down. I documented everything. A few days in, Mia posted a polished story from a rooftop dinner. 2 cocktails, laughing faces, the caption, "Not everything is what it seems. 1 week is all I need." The post was curated to the point of performance. Comments rolled in, support, pity, and a chorus that lined up on her side. If you control the image, you control the narrative. People saw the picture and believed the story. She kept trying to stage normal. She wanted the public to see a smiling woman thriving. The problem for them was that vendors and contracts are not images and don't rewrite themselves for a caption. When she started calling vendors and offering to fix dates, the vendors responded as vendors do, with receipts, schedules, and the reality of labor and deposits. By the time she showed up to a mutual friend's birthday party on the 6th day with a new man on her arm, Evan, a founder in his early 30s, polite and unfazed, her public campaign looked like success. People cheered. The new boyfriend smiled like he belonged in a room where things were already arranged for him. Her grin became the headline. Friends who'd messaged me with worried emojis went quiet. Others openly celebrated her seeming resilience. I stared at the photos people sent. Felt like being swapped for an image. On the 7th day, the circus reached its peak. The social feeds were full of Mia's pictures, and the Hale family pushed hard to contain everything with offers and legal language. But the private mechanics were noisier. Vendors produced contracts, invoices, payment receipts. The florist, the band, the photographer each had paper trails. Some deposits had been paid by us, some by her family, and some jointly. Privilege makes you loud and fast, but it doesn't erase receipts. What followed was an unraveling that didn't happen overnight. The Hale family leaned on connections and favors, but favors look thin when gyro transfers, payroll, and schedules are in the balance. The florist refused to release a schedule change without compensation. The photographer held deposits and demanded cancellation fees. The band wanted full balance or rehearsal fees back. Contracts are signatures and bank transfers, not feelings. The more Martin pushed, the more vendors dug in. What surprised me was how thin favors were when real money and public embarrassment mixed. Wealth opens doors sometimes, but when people's livelihoods are involved, sympathy thins. Vendors have staff to pay, schedules to fill. Being wealthy doesn't mean you can tap a silence button and make obligations disappear. The narrative Mia had spent a week building began to crack in private circles. Parents were on the phone with planners, and friends who had cheered stopped cheering when asked to pick up invoices or move dates. A vendor invoice leaked into the neighborhood grapevine. Suddenly, people who'd reposted supportive captions had awkward conversations with the event planner. "We didn't know," one old friend texted me. "This is messy." There were threats of legal action from both sides. Their counsel was loud. Mine was calm. My lawyer kept repeating the practical line, "You walked away. You didn't sign away your rights. They can sue and scream, but collection is different." The contracts and tax receipts didn't line up with the glossy public story. And that paperwork matters more than a caption when money is involved. The fallout wasn't only financial. Human costs bled in slow, quiet ways. Friends fractured. Cousins stopped answering my texts. A DJ we'd hoped would play our wedding said he couldn't get involved. Mia's mother called mine in tears, begging for social ease. My mother advised caution. "This could all blow over," she said. "I don't forgive for the sake of social ease. I assess. I choose." People asked why I didn't go on TV or post everything, the receipts, voicemails, and the prenup. Why I didn't make a spectacle. The answer is simple. Dignity isn't a performance. I wanted no part of a revenge show. I wanted to be deliberate and private. Weaponizing pain is cheap. Living with the consequences quietly is harder and, I think, more honest. About 6 weeks after the walkout, Mia called and asked to meet. Her voice on the voicemail was stripped of the gloss the week had required. We met at a tiny coffee shop that charged too much for beans and small pastries for $6 each. The place felt small and neutral. She looked the same and not. Hair the same but the eyes less sharp. "I was wrong about the language," she said before I took a sip. "I didn't mean to make it sound this way. My dad's been loud." I panicked. "You could have said, 'Let's protect some assets jointly,' or 'Let's make a plan,'" I said. "You used grammar that made me a line item." She kept looking down. "I was scared," she said. "I thought guarding the money means guarding me. I didn't think about how that reads. I didn't think about what we were signing away when I used the word mine." We talked for 90 minutes. We argued and revisited moments where we'd been careless, small, and where we'd had to be real with one another. She apologized in a way that was immediate but not cleansed of old defense mechanisms. She said, "I thought I could keep both, my family and us. Turns out I can't." I said, "You created a grammar where I didn't exist. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice." We didn't get back together. She wanted time, I wanted clarity. We left the coffee shop with different versions of regret. Months later, the invoices still floated around. The Hale family covered some costs eventually, but only after the reputational noise and vendor pressure made the cost of inaction higher than paying. Some friends who'd cheered quietly sent short messages. I didn't realize. There were no dramatic reconciliations, just small, human admissions and apologies that didn't change what had been lost. Mia kept socializing and kept her privileges. She also found that the sheen cost something. A handful of friends who couldn't square her smiling photos with the vendor invoices drifted away. She learned that you can buy a moment, but you can't buy back the small rituals people share. Those small rituals are not hireable. They are the thing that makes someone a partner and not a placeholder. I moved into a small apartment with too much light and an afternoon sun balcony. I bought a perfectly functional espresso maker and relearned how to make breakfast. I went on bad dates and one or two good ones. I kept a box of photos in a drawer, not as relics to mourn but as an inventory of what had been real. I didn't want to humiliate or gloat. I wanted to be deliberate. What "replace me in a week" really means. Mia's line revealed a cultural math. Some people honestly think affection, partnership, and care can be itemized and swapped if necessary. If you have the means to replace, and the social capital to make that replacement look clean, you can buy convenience. But you can't buy the small, mundane things that make someone a partner instead of a placeholder. You can hire a photo, a date, a line of supporters. You can't recreate years of inside jokes, the way someone squeezes your fingers crossing a street, the list of awful movies you've watched because the other person likes them. Those are slow, stupid, ordinary things, and they're not hireable. Replacement isn't an act. It's a life built over time, and that takes longer than a PR campaign. She tried to replace me with a glossy weekend love. It didn't hold. Not because I'm extraordinary or irreplaceable in some cosmic sense, but because the thing she thought she could swap out was trust and shared life, the kind of thing you can't engineer in a week. If you're reading this, here's what I want you to know. If anyone tells you that a prenup is the early warning sign of a pragmatic, clear-headed relationship, that's sometimes true. But it can also be a cover for a language. If someone uses legal terms to preempt conversation and then says they could replace you on a timetable, take it as data. You deserve a partner who says "we" with both their mouth and their bank account. You deserve someone who doesn't treat partnership like an auction where your value is measured and re-auctioned at the first sign of discomfort. I walked away because I value the ordinary, ridiculous, messy things people later miss when they try to buy normal back. I left because I wasn't willing to be a ledger entry. I left because the language she used to describe our future said she didn't see partnership, only protection. That was the deal breaker.